Welcome back to Advanced Physical Medicine of Yorkville's online weight loss training classes. Today we're going to be discussing week 4, which is talking about behavioral formation. And to give you an overview, we're going to discuss the A.B.C behavioral model formation, and that's going to include discussing what triggers you to want to eat, what your behavior is because of that trigger, and then what is the consequence. We're also going to be giving you some ideas, examples, suggestions on how to help those urges to eat. The A.B.C behavioral model is referring to the antecedent or the stimulant that triggers you to want to eat. B stands for the behavioral, which is your reaction to the stimulus, and C is the consequence or the outcome of your behavior. I first want to talk about the antecedent or the stimulant that causes you to want to eat. There's both external and internal cues related to that stimulus. External cues would be the sight of food, smell of food, the place, the person, or maybe even the time of day that triggers you to want to eat. The internal cues are your emotion, your stress, boredom, or even true hunger that could be a stimulant for you to want to eat. In the A.B.C model, B stands for behavioral, and this is your response to the cue. External behavioral responses would be that you eat, or you avoid the food, or you eat a small amount of food. Internal responses could be your thoughts or feelings about that food. The C in the A.B.C model is referring to the consequence or the payoff or the result that follows a behavior. External consequences or payoffs can be the reward of your behavior. It could be weight gain, weight loss, social approval, or maybe just the status quo. Internal consequences could be your thoughts. You could have relief of stress, relaxation, enjoyment, or even comfort. Each component of the A.B.C model can be a thought, a feeling, or an action. As we're going through week 4 lesson on behavioral formation, I really want you to think about for yourself, what is it that stimulates you to eat? What type of reaction do you have to that stimulus, and then what is the outcome? If you can understand these things, it can help you to be able to change your behavior in a way that will help you to be able to reach your goals. For example, what is it that stimulates you to eat? Is it the smell of food? Is it the sight of food? Is it the time of day? If you can identify what it is that creates you to want to eat, then you can avoid those things that lead you to bad decisions. If it's the smell of food, then you need to avoid that area where you're going to be smelling the food. If it's the sight of food, then you need to be able to put your food in a position or an area where you're not going to have sight of it. For example, if you have candy dishes at work or candy dishes in the house. For example, if you have candy dishes at work or candy dishes in the house, it's best to be able to put that food in a cupboard where you're not going to be able to see it. As well, if you have a pantry where you have a bunch of snacks, you could put those snacks in an opaque container like a Tupperware where you're not going to be able to see what everything is. That way it won't trigger that feeling of wanting to eat. You can do the same in your refrigerator as well. You can store it in opaque containers, so when you open up the fridge, you won't see all the different foods that trigger that hunger feeling. There's 2 different types of hunger feeling. One is that your body is truly hungry and needs food. They need nutrients, your body needs calories. With that true hunger feeling, a lot of times you can have side effects if you don't eat. You can become very tired, you can get headaches, your stomach can become painful, and those are true hunger feelings. The other type of hunger feeling is the psychological feeling that you need food, and that can be generated when you are stressed, when you're bored, when you're excited, when you're with friends, when you smell food, when you see food, or even time of day. And all of those things trigger your mind to think that it's hungry, but you really don't have a physical hunger. It's a psychological hunger. And one of the biggest things with weight loss is identifying whether you are physically hungry or did you create a psychological hunger. A commonly known experiment was performed by Pavlov, and this was Pavlov's dog experiment. And what Pavlov did is he would put out meat for a dog, and the dog would salivate. It would see the food and it would be hungry and it would eat. And then what Pavlov did is every time they put the meat out, he rang a bell. And what happened is the dog started to learn the behavior of every time there was a bell rung, there was food. And so eventually Pavlov would ring the bell but not put the meat out. And even though the meat wasn't there, when that bell was rung, it triggered the thought of that meat and the dog would actually salivate. So the dog learned that the sound of the bell means food, and it would become hungry. It wasn't a physical hunger, it was a psychological hunger. And then ultimately, after a while, when Pavlov would ring the bell but not put food out, the dog started to disassociate the bell to the food, and when Pavlov would ring the bell, the dog would not salivate anymore. So here's the good and bad of it. Let's start with the bad first. The bad is that we can have learned behavior to create bad reactions. So the dog would associate being hungry with the ringing of a bell. But the bell has nothing to do with hunger for the dog. It was a learned behavior. For example, we could snack maybe every time we sit in a certain area in the living room, a certain chair or couch, because when we sit there, we always snack while we watch TV. That may be one example. Or when we get together with friends, we always drink or we always snack on food. And so that's a learned behavior, just like the ringing of the bell causes the dog to salivate. So that's the bad of it. The good of it is, just like we learn that behavior, we can unlearn that behavior. So after a while of ringing the bell and not eating, the dog eventually wasn't hungry anymore once the bell rang. And so the dog would not salivate after that bell was rung. And so this week is teaching you to learn, as an example, what bell ringing causes you to eat. And it may not be a bell, but that's an example. So what is it that triggers you to want to eat? That's the stimulus, that's the antecedent in the A.B.C model. If you can think about and identify what your stimulus is, that's going to be your first step in changing your behavior. In the A.B.C model, the B again stands for behavior, which is your response to the stimulus for food. Here's some things you can do to help change your behavior. One thing is, when you get the stimulus, is to avoid your typical behavior, whatever that may be. Another thing you can do is learn a new response to the stimulus. Learning a new response means we need to do something other than what we have done in the past. When we learn a new response, that's called a competing behavior. And the competing behavior must produce the same psychological response or the consequence that the original behavior produced. For example, if your stimulus to eat may be emotion or depression, a lot of times we want to eat some food to make us feel better or provide some type of relaxation when we're depressed or stressed, whatever your emotional response may be. And so there's a competing behavior that can produce the same response. Exercise is one competing behavior. Exercise releases hormones throughout your body that help to relax you and also help to make you happier. And so this is a known response in medicine. So if your stimulus is depression or stress, exercising would be an excellent competing behavior. Exercising is a big part of our weight loss program that we've put together. And you may not have a gym to exercise at any moment. However, it is possible to do some wall push-ups, some push-ups on the floor, some sit-ups, or start walking around wherever you may be. And so you need to be flexible and have some different exercises, some different ideas, some different things that you can do to help to provide that consequence, that behavior that you're looking for. If your stimulus is the sight or smell of food, and that triggers a psychological hunger, A lot of times brushing your teeth or using mouthwash will help get rid of that psychological hunger for food. Most of us, after we have a dental appointment, are not wanting to eat right away, or after we brush our teeth, that psychological hunger feeling is broken. And so in using the mouthwash or to brush your teeth, it will help you to break that barrier of wanting to eat when you see food. If your stimulus is a certain place that you sit, you want to eat. For example, maybe you do some work in your kitchen, but every time in your kitchen you think of eating, so when you do work in the kitchen, you get a psychological hunger. My suggestion is to change that behavior and do your work somewhere else. Maybe in a study or a different location in the house that's not associated with eating. When you do that, it will break that psychological hunger and you're able to do your work and not feel hungry. It may be that if you sit in a certain chair when you're watching TV, you have a psychological hunger because you're used to snacking. So my suggestion would be either to watch TV in a different room, cut TV out completely and read a book, or sit in a different area in that room that isn't associated with eating. It's best when you're eating either at work or home to always be in the same location. If you always eat in the same location, then you will only associate eating over time when you sit in that location. So that will help you to know to avoid that area when you don't have a physical hunger and you need to get things done. So you can go into a different area of the house or different area of work so that you don't create that psychological hunger and you're able to get things done and not associate food with that activity. It's best as well if you have an irregular eating schedule to do your best to schedule certain times of the day when you eat. If you can create a more rigid structure with eating, it will help you prevent from skipping meals and then overeating later, or waiting too long to eat and then eating most of your calories in one meal. If you can eat throughout the day, smaller meals throughout the day, you won't get that physical hunger and you can manage your portions much easier that way. And of course, an easy way to get rid of the stimulus of food is just to not purchase or not bring the food in the house that you have a weakness towards. So when you're at the grocery and you're buying cookies and you say it's for the kids maybe, is it really for the kids or is it something that you want to be able to snack on? And are the cookies really even healthy for the kids? So we can not only help ourselves by eliminating the bad food from our house, we can also make it healthier for our family as well. And they may not like it at first, but just like it's easy to create a bad habit over about 6 to 12 weeks, you can create good habits by getting rid of some of this bad food. A funny thing happens when we eat a lot of sugar. It creates more bad bacteria in our gut. There's normal bacteria called normal flora in your gut, and you may have heard of them. Probiotics create normal flora or normal bacteria in your gut. But the more sugar you eat, the more it promotes the growth of bad bacteria, and then that bad bacteria pushes out the good bacteria. When that happens, we have a harder time to be able to digest our food because the good bacteria aren't in our gut to break the food down and get the nutrients. It also creates a lot of cravings. So the more bad bacteria you have in your gut, the more they're sending signals to your brain that we need more sugar because that's how they survive, and it creates this continual and vicious circle of wanting more sugar. The more sugar you eat, the more bad bacteria that grows, the more bad bacteria that grows, the more you want sugar. So if you really truly want to get healthy and want weight loss, eliminating or significantly reducing your sugar intake is going to be a big part of that. And it's going to be most challenging in the beginning as you're going through that process of trying to eliminate the bad bacteria and increase the growth of the good bacteria or the normal flora in your gut. And so when you have that craving for sugar, a lot of times you need to remind yourself that it may be the bad bacteria in your gut sending a signal to your brain, hey, we need sugar. And when you eat the sugar, you're essentially feeding the bad bacteria, creating more of the problem. So if you can start cutting down on your sugar and resisting against that sugar craving during the first several weeks of your weight loss, or even starting right now and going for a few weeks, that craving for the sugar will eventually start to subside. That's the good news. So what you're craving now won't be that way for the rest of your life. It's like giving up any addiction. In the beginning, whatever you're addicted to or really enjoy is hardest to give up, and as time progresses on, it gets easier and easier not to want it. And so this is the neurological, scientific way of giving up sugar or reducing sugar, the craving that's created by that process. But the good news is, long term, you won't want that sugar as much as you're wanting it now. You can also supplement your diet with probiotics. Probiotics are the good bacteria that are supposed to be in your gut. So as you're going through this process of reducing or eliminating your sugar, you can help support your normal flora by taking probiotics. It's a pill, a capsule. If you're interested in probiotics, you can talk to us at the office here, and we can order some probiotics for you, which will be very high quality and will be in the billions of the probiotics in each capsule. So it's very concentrated probiotics, and they'll be great for you and help you along with this craving, help you to lose weight faster, help you to digest food better, help you to sleep better, have more energy. These are all great outcomes of a probiotic. We highly recommend it. Just ask us. We'll be able to get it taken care of for you. So this week, lesson 4, we talked about the ABCs of behavioral formation: the antecedent, the behavior, and the consequence. So what stimulates you to eat? How do you react to that? And what is the consequence to your reaction? So I really want you to focus on what stimulates you to eat, and is it a physical hunger? Are you truly hungry and need the food? Or is it a psychological hunger? Are you hungry because it's triggering in your mind that you need to eat? Let's focus on replacing some of your behaviors that lead to poor consequences, like weight gain. And so if you eat because you're stressed or you're bored, or because of the time of day or position where you are in a chair or a certain place in your house or at work, then you need to change things up. And so your behavior can be getting rid or eliminating the food, putting it in opaque containers, giving the food to your friends so it's out of the house, let them deal with it, or just not buying that food the next time you go to the store. You can also find different locations to do work, so a different chair. You can sit in a different area when you're watching TV, or don't do your work in the kitchen where you normally eat. You can also change where you eat to one spot. And so maybe that's in the kitchen, and do nothing else except for eat. So don't watch TV while you eat, don't do your work while you eat, just eat, converse with family, great time to talk to family. And these changes in behavioral, while they may be significant for others and they may be just tweaking your lifestyles, can create great long-term success. Just like Pavlov had his experience on the dogs, a bell created hunger, and then removed the food when the bell is rang, and the dog isn't hungry anymore when the bell rings. So we can learn bad behaviors, we can learn good behaviors. The choice is yours. I know you're going to be successful with this. I know you can do it. We believe in you. Make this a great week.